Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with the wacky, witty, and wise Charles Coulombe.
Hello. Wacky, witty, and wise?
Yeah, some fan mail from John Barrett.
Thank you, I guess. That's better than giggling cuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. I don't know. I want to thank everyone who was good enough to write in with definitions of cuck for us. That was good. Also, well, I suppose I should expostulate on the significance of today.
Yeah.
Well, today is December 1st, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in this year, 2017, it's a particularly strange day. Why, you ask? I'm glad you did. Because Sunday is the first Sunday of Advent, the beginning of the new liturgical year, right? But yesterday was November 30th, St. Andrew's Day. So we have these weird 2 days, today and tomorrow, that are the last gasp of the old liturgical year. Yeah.
Okay.
These are the last 2 days after Pentecost. This is it. And you see, the other rites of the church, the Latin rite is the last one to catch up with a new liturgical year.
Mm-hmm.
The first of the Byzantines, they start September 1st. The Mennonites, the Copts, all those guys come in at different times between the 1st of September and now. But we're the last ones, and we're holding on to this special time after Pentecost, not letting it go. And I think that's important.
Why is that?
I don't know. I just think it sounds impressive, really.
Are you resentful that we're late? We're late to the game?
Yeah, pretty much. I resent that tremendously. No, I mean, honestly, all joking aside for just a second, one does become very aware of the passage of time, seriously. As you go from the month of the Holy Souls to the month of the infancy of Jesus, wow, what a mixture of nostalgia for the past, mourning for departed loved ones, hope for the future, all of it all bound together in an amazing mixture of things. Really, starting in October and going all the way, I'd say, up to Candlemas, it's such a magical time of year. And I don't mean it quite in the most wonderful time of the year. That's not what I mean. Very thoughtful, very evocative. It's just a wonderful time.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad to be here to share it with everyone.
Excellent.
Good. All right. What do we got?
Okay, so first we have a little special something.
Oh, what's that?
Hello. Catholic Quest for Holy Grail.
Wow.
For the Holy Grail.
I know that book.
Published by Can Books. I wanted to show this on the program because, online pictures, it really doesn't do it justice how gorgeous this book is. And you got the interior. Very nice pictures. It's a beautifully done book. Can Books, they don't mess around.
No, they don't. They're quite good. And I have to say, in case you're curious as to where the artwork came from, these are all from the Edward Abbey. That is the name of a 19th century artist. The Edward Abbey paintings of the murals of the Quest of the Holy Grail in the Boston Public Library. And if you go to their website, they've got a lot of stuff, plus pictures of all of them. But they have a lot of stuff about them. It's just a really, really good source. So look that up. The Boston Public Library, Edward Abbey, Holy Grail. Stick that into Google, and you're in for a good time.
Yeah.
And honestly, now I don't want to sound too sycophantic, but 10 are fun to work with. I like them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They really, mind you, Thomas A. Nelson, founder of the company, is long gone, but really through the dark days of the 60s and 70s and 80s, they did so much, and have continued to do so, but then when it was really, really bad, they've done so much for the devotional life of this country and English-speaking Catholicism.
Absolutely.
And of course, by keeping Bellick and so many other people in print, and my late and much lamented friend, Joan Carroll Cruz, whose accounts of the miraculous really require reading. I mean, every Catholic should read everything Joan Carroll Cruz ever wrote. That's a personal opinion. It puts everything in perspective and reminds us, as I tried to do with the Grail book, that all this drivel we go through, this nonsense, the jumping up and down that we have to do as part of life, is secondary to the unchangeable realities of our faith, which are simply unchanging realities of reality, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the faith, how do I put this? Things aren't true because the church teaches them. The church teaches them because they're objectively true.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and then, heaven forces us to remember that. That's what miracles are about. That's our Lord's way of saying, oh, really, little man? Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's nice. Boom! And we pay attention or we don't. And very often, of course, we don't.
We've got one blurb on the back cover. Few writers are better equipped to ask and answer the questions that this quest poses. Joseph Pierce. What do you think about that? Pretty nice, huh?
Well, yeah, thanks, Joe. Although it reminds me a little bit of Winston Churchill's line, people who like a book like this kind of book, will find it's the kind of book they like, or whatever it was. I'm sure it's true. No, I really appreciate the blurb. And you know, it was a fun book to write. It didn't turn out the way I thought it would. It was a quest all on its own, writing it. So, I hope you'll enjoy it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoy everything I write. But for that matter, everything I say. I don't know. I mean, I don't, but I hope you will.
You don't enjoy everything you say?
Oh, gosh, no. Oh, you can't honestly say there hasn't been a time in your life when you say, I wish I hadn't said that.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, see.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, if you buy this book, you get it signed.
It's true.
$25, Tumbler House website. Hardcover. Solid book right here. There we go. TumblerHouse.com.
And the pages won't fall out on you.
No. Let's see here. One other thing we're going to advertise. Tumbler House has a Discord server. We have a link to it. If you want to get involved with Tumbler House, that's the place to do it. We have a lot of young, fun traditionalists, and actually half of the traditionalists we have in our little voice chat server, they're catechumens. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I can.
There's a lot of grace showering down on the earth right now. A lot of grace.
Yeah, even on the top floor of the Tumbler building.
Especially on the top floor of the Tumbler House building. So, yeah. Okay, and let's get started.
All right, what do we got?
Beverly Stevens asks the first question today.
All right.
What do you think of the outbreak of sexual predation accusations now being lodged against major Hollywood media and political figures? We have noticed that most of these men, Franken, Weinstein, Matt Lauer, are ardent supporters of women's rights. That is to say, abortion. Do you see any connection between their politics in this regard and their proclivities?
Well, firstly, I welcome this opportunity to make a statement. Ladies and gentlemen, despite what you've heard, despite the rumors, I have never been approached improperly at any time by any celebrity, living or dead. I just want to put an end to the rumors.
Wow, okay.
We got that out of the way?
Yeah, that's a load off my mind.
Yeah, well, it's half my mind gone right there. No, seriously. You know, one of my dreams has always been, whenever there's a scandal in town like this, is to call a press conference and declare, which is quite true, that I don't know anything about it, I'm not related to any, I'm not connected, ladies and gentlemen of the press, help me stop the rumors. I'm hoping it'll be like a book contract or something lucrative if I push that line. Anyway, what did Coulombe know and when did he know it? That's just nothing and never. Anyway, seriously, we joke, but this, on one level, this has been a long time coming because, of course, as in any other trade where there's power versus desire for advancement and opportunity, sex for favors rears its ugly head. And it is, the old joke about the casting couch is not a joke. It's always been that way.
Of course.
When Corey Haim died, it was shortly before he died, I should say, he and Corey Feldman got into a big fight on TV about Corey Haim as being dealt with by a fellow who had dealt with Corey Feldman and who he had introduced him to and all that. And then he died, and Feldman said he felt horrible about the whole thing and very guilty, but that the man in question was still very powerful in Hollywood, and he didn't feel that he could go against him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I understand a week or two ago, Feldman has filed charges with the LAPD against somebody or other.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's going to come out. Weinstein, Matt Lauer, of course, was roasting Bill O'Reilly for this stuff a couple of months ago.
Mm.
And now it turns out, supposedly, he's on the receiving end. Hypocrisy is one of the most cherished human traits. And it's difficult to exercise today because we have no standards. You see, hypocrisy is only possible when you have standards. And if you don't, you let it all hang out and no one cares. The reason I think why Lauer and Weinstein and people like that were pro-women's rights was partly as compensation, for the way they are, for the way they really treat women. We all have to have this psychological compensation, I treat women like a beast, but I contribute to women's causes.
Ah, right.
So I'm really a nice person.
Right.
Remember, ladies and gentlemen, everyone has to think they're nice people. We all do. Now, if you're smart, you go to the confessional and you know that there are limits to your niceness.
Did they call that? Did they call that phenomenon? Is that liberal guilt? Like,
Yeah.
oh, you do all this, but I saved the whales, so I'm a good person.
So I'm a good person.
Yeah.
And there's the need, because they have no other way to be a quote-unquote good person, there's a need to constantly prove this. Like the Calvinists having to make money to prove that they're one of God's elect. It's the same impulse without any religion. That's part of it. Also, of course, I hate to be vulgar, but a woman's being able to have an abortion, certainly for a man like Weinstein and Lauer, would cover their tracks if anything results. I do have to say, though, that on some levels it's beginning to seem to me a little bit like the witch hunt, because this latest thing with Garrison Keillor is ridiculous.
Who was Garrison Keillor?
Garrison Keillor, granted, he's an old guy, he's 75, so you wouldn't have heard of him. But for many years on public radio, he ran a show called A Prairie Home Companion. It was very fun, very folksy. A movie spun off with Lindsay Lohan, guardian of, female...
I'm not familiar.
Lindsay Lohan?
Not the biggest fan. Oh, are you a great Lindsay Lohan fan? You're just...
Not really, but I'm willing to feign outrage. I'm willing to feign outrage. No, but at any rate, it's a very folksy radio show that had radio plays in it and country music and shout-outs to people all over the country. It was almost radio hee-haw in a sense. It wasn't quite that, but it was getting that way. And the running gag was his fictional hometown of Lake Wobegon, Minnesota. And it was fun stuff. It was real Americana. It would crack some very funny jokes, most of which might be lost on a younger audience. Like when he referred to Chautauqua, New York, which was the headquarters of the Chautauqua movement. That's something you wouldn't have heard of, but it was basically a means of popular entertainment and education in the 19th century. And it goes on to this day here and there. But it's centered in Chautauqua, New York, hence the name. But he described it on the show when he was broadcasting from Chautauqua. He described it as the kind of place where little old ladies take their grandmothers.
Interesting. I don't know what that means exactly.
Oh, just think of it. Little old ladies take their grandmothers.
So super old ladies.
Yeah! Mega old ladies. Anyway, if you have to explain, it's not funny. That's not the point. What happened is that he retired a couple of years ago. He's now, they still rerun his stuff. He's still a big name, known for it and so forth. But this woman came forward and said that he had put his hand on her inappropriately. This is the only thing that's been associated with it. Well, his response was that what had happened was that she had something, a divorce or I forget, it was some problem. He put his hand on her back to console her, and he wasn't quite aware that her back thing was open.
Oh.
So his hand touched her flesh, and he goes, ooh, he pulls his hand back and apologizes.
Yeah.
And he thought that was it.
Was that it?
No. She surfaced with this. So now Minnesota Public Radio have not only banished him from the airwaves, they're not going to rerun any of his decades worth of shows. They're airbrushing him out of the picture like Stalin. So, well, I have to admit that I'm not too upset about Weinstein or Matt Lauer, or even Bill O'Reilly. The American psyche is such that we'll take this stuff and run with it. And for a while, and again, don't get me wrong, it couldn't happen to a better industry than Hollywood, because this thing is endemic to Hollywood with sexual exploitation. It has been since its very beginning. That's all on the one hand. But on the other hand, the American mind loves moral crusades, even when it's completely immoral and depraved. Tends to crusade against smoking. You know my joke about the madam of the bordello fearful that the girls are smoking afterward.
Right.
That's how we are.
Okay.
So.
I mean, okay. Well, my personal wondering on Hollywood is, I mean, is it really that the truth is coming out now? I mean, I've always been thinking that there's got to be some entity that is funding this, because Hollywood has covered up this for, I mean, swept this under the rug for so long.
Yeah.
Everybody has known Kevin Spacey is gay and all this other stuff for forever.
Well, not everybody. People, remember, you live in Southern California. But I would say that part of it really is that Hollywood itself is declining as a force.
I see.
I mean, look what we're doing right now, right here.
That's true.
Look at this. This is the future here at the bottom floor of the
Bottom
top
floor, right. Not the top floor, bottom floor.
And none of those intermediate places with those offices and the bars in the back of each office. Not there.
No.
This is the bottom floor. I mean, even the secretarial pools on the floor immediately above us.
I know.
I love getting relegated down here. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I don't need perks. I'm not about perks. It would be nice to have the company car now and then, but never mind. Mm-hmm. Seriously, I think that it may be, and again, I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, but I think it may well be that this is a sign of Hollywood waning as a power.
Interesting.
They're losing money. People's entertainment tastes are changing. The merger of television and the internet is the prequel to the merger of cinema and internet. The things you can do with special effects and all that. I mean, you have games that are almost more gripping than movies.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to bring in Red Dawn Redemption, but you know what I'm talking about.
Red Dead Redemption.
That's the one.
The cowboy one.
Yeah.
I played that.
See? And the zombies.
The zombies?
Yeah, they have a zombie.
Oh, okay, I haven't played that one.
No, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Excuse me, we weren't talking about old people playing stupid games like that. Stop it. Anyway, to the audience, they get very upset.
I know.
But seriously, no, I think that a good piece of it is that Hollywood is perhaps waning as a force. And again, the American psyche is such that we always need a victim of our crusade. So, and there's so much to choose from. I mean, you lift up that rock in Hollywood, and there are all these grubs.
Right.
And we can all get excited and outraged and all that and feel good about ourselves, because we're not like that.
I think this is such an incredibly exciting time to live in. There's been no time like this time where the barriers to entry on publishing and media have been decimated. Anybody with a camera Anyone who can write decent can get to the top.
Or even can't.
Or even can't?
Yeah, you don't need to be able to write decently.
Oh, right. Right.
You could be able, see, and the other thing that's difficult to see is how the monetary factor is going to shake out in this brave new world. Because before, entrance to these things was difficult, but the payoff was great. Which is why people would move heaven and earth to get into it.
Right.
Now, anybody can do anything, but who's paying for it?
Right.
And that, and I'm not saying this, ladies and gentlemen, out of mere self-interest, because a lot of you out there will be, I have no doubt, involved with internet-based things, whether it be news or fiction or film or podcast, whatever you're doing. I'm sure you're having a good time with it. I know we are. But the question, okay, that's great, but where's the there? Where's the money? And that is a question that has not as yet been answered.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will be.
Okay. Next question is from Sylvain Durand.
Oh boy, that's a good French name for you.
Greetings, fellow papists. I always try to avoid becoming a sedevacantist, but the canonization of JP2 really bothered me. While I can't judge his personal piety, his ecumenical ventures seem to me to be totally against previous papal teachings. Since canonizations are infallible, and since saints are to be emulated, should I invite a bunch of Protestants, Buddhists, and Muslims so we can all pray together to the Supreme Being, each in our own way?
No. No, first you've got to understand that saints are not always to be emulated. Canonization does not make everything the saint did while alive right. Because they weren't a saint then. They were human. If you read not just the horrific correspondence between Saints Jerome and Augustine, or Jerome and Augustine if you prefer, or the really nasty persecution of St. Wilfrid of York by St. Bernard of Clairvaux. Look at St. Celestine V, who was the last pope before Benedict XVI to abdicate. He was a very holy man, he was a hermit, and he was a horrible pope. It's terrible. Made all sorts of awful decisions. Because he didn't know anything about being pope. It's a skill set, ladies and gentlemen, like running a camera. So, that's the first thing. You would like everything a saint does to be emulable.
Yeah.
But if you study the lives of any of them in detail, you're going to find they were human beings, and they made terrible mistakes on them. That's the first thing. The second thing is that as far as John Paul II's life went, his personal piety, the last 10 years of his life were horrible. They were dry martyrdom if ever I've heard of one. Moreover, he seems, judging by his last book, to have gotten something of a handle on the ways in which he had perhaps failed the church in his own estimation. It was interesting to me, for instance, one of the complaints I always had about him was that his episcopal appointments were terrible. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Right.
And in his last book, what does he say? One of my major mistakes was not taking more time with episcopal appointments. And that last year and a half, he was alive. We had a flurry of really good appointments to dioceses. So much so I look at them and think, where have you been all my life? Well, this is the Pope we wanted in 1978,
Yeah.
But at any rate, the sad truth of the matter is that you cannot look to the example of any single saint for an absolutely A1 perfect blueprint of how to do things. Even St. Ignatius, for instance, for all you Jesuit fans, said that he had been very much mistaken to be so physically penitential when he was younger because it damaged his health. It made it harder for him to do things when he was older. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to play especially hard devil's advocate on this one because I know all these people who and all their objections. So I'm going to state all their objections and stuff like that. So okay, where's the evidence that John Paul II recanted on his deathbed over the ecumenical fiasco?
Okay, well, firstly, you're implying that you've got the authority to make that demand. You don't. I don't. We don't. Popes have made terrible mistakes, but there's no living authority that can tell them what they need to do.
Well, okay.
That's the first thing. Secondly, you've got to say that what he did was an offense against faith and morals. A canonical offense? No, I don't think so. Was it scandalous? Yeah. Was it bad behavior? Yeah. But it wasn't immoral. He certainly went out of his way to give all kinds of caveats about it. And although personally I think it was the wrong thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
it's not up to me to demand that he recant.
Well, right, it's not up to you, but in order to be a saint, he would need to recant.
Recant what? When did Saint Bernard of Clairvaux recant his persecution of Saint Wilfrid of York? No.
Well, did that involve a heresy?
The Pope made a very big point of having them pray separately so to avoid indifferentism.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, what would you say to the charge that millions of souls were lost because that ecumenical stuff creates and invites lukewarmness and exploration toward other faiths?
I would say there may be a lot of truth to that, but I don't know how much. I'm sure I'll find out when I go up to be judged myself.
Okay. See, that sticks in a lot of these people's craw.
It has every reason to stick in their craw. But what I'm saying is, you can dislike tremendously what a pope does.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Clement XIII knuckling under to the pressure of the European monarchs and abolishing the Jesuits. That was a horrible thing to do. Absolutely horrible. It had the repercussions of that, amongst other things, emptied Mexico, large stretches of Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
of resident priests. And you know what the result of that was?
What?
Loss of millions of souls.
Hmm.
Pius XII, backing 2/3 of the bishops of Australia in the big fight they had there in the 1950s over the Catholic labor movement.
Mm.
I'm sure some souls were lost there because it looked as though the church had come down on the side of the socialists and communists.
Interesting.
Now, Pius XI betraying the Cristeros, in effect. You think that didn't cause souls to be lost?
That's true.
But who am I? I mean, I can make an historical judgment. I can tell you I don't like what they did,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it's a matter of life and death.
Mm-hmm.
Pius VII, airily giving away rights of the church in France to Napoleon, the Catholics had died for. In the categorize. You know, again, ladies and gentlemen, just because you don't know something doesn't mean it wasn't important. Okay? Just remember that.
Also, that happened a long time ago.
Well, that makes it all
We're
better.
living in exceptional circumstances
Oh,
now.
yeah, I know. Because we're all being persecuted for our faith, and we're all losing our jobs, and we're starving, we're being tortured. Yeah, I know.
We've never been in this sort of crisis.
No,
you
gosh,
said yourself,
no,
everything's
yes.
being attacked.
That's right. And you know what? The worst of it is that my personal sensibilities are being outraged. And if I had the kind of guts that I have online, why, I'd start evangelizing my parents and my family and my boss and my friends and like,
Oh.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Well, that's ad hominem, Charles.
Yeah, it is ad hominem, but so is why didn't the Pope recant? You throw an ad hominem, I'll give you one right back. You know, it's like by beginning a thing. As a heretic, how do you feel about? I mean, there are these ad hoc assumptions
Yeah.
that just
You know what's funny is people still aren't going to be satisfied by anything you've said.
No, I know. Everyone's going to be pissed off.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Twinkle, twinkle, little bat, how I wonder where you're at. Up above the world so high, like a tea tray in the sky. I know, ladies and gentlemen, we all want easy, pat answers. But you know, you can't get them out of your own life, can you? Why do you sin? Why is it you've always got something to take to the confessional? Why is it you're nasty on occasion? Why is it you talk before knowing? Why is it you are silent when you do know? Why do you do that? I'll tell you why you do it. You do it for the same reason I do. Because we're fallen human beings. And we're stupid, and we're weak, and we're cowardly. And every pope that has ever been is as much a one of us as everyone else who's ever been. I have always found it far easier to judge the misdeeds of others than my own. I have always found it far easier to judge the misdeeds of those in authority over me than my own. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot John Paul II did, especially the Assisi stuff, that just drives me crazy. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. But I'm sure if I had been a Cristero betrayed by Pius XI, a Vendéen feeling betrayed by Pius VII, or maybe even a resident of the German diocese handed over by Julius III to the Lutherans, speaking of loss of souls, I don't know, maybe I'd have been upset had I lived then. I don't know. Expect perfection, ladies and gentlemen, out of anyone this side of the grave, and you will be gravely mistaken. But if you really want perfection out of somebody, start with you, and then move on to everyone else.
Thomas A. Kempis said exactly that. Imitation of Christ. People always ask for recommendations from you. How about that book?
That's a good book.
Especially for, I heard that is the second best-selling book all time behind the Bible.
It's got a lot of nuts and bolts advice, and I'll tell you something funny about it, though.
Uh-huh.
Thomas A. Kempis will never be canonized.
Why is that?
Well, I'll tell you. But before I do, let me emphasize that this does not lessen in any way the truth of what he writes about in his book. But what you're about to hear, ladies and gentlemen, is a good lesson for everybody, even me. When Thomas A. Kempis died, he immediately had don't be shocked, a reputation for holiness. No, it's true. Just be like, read his stuff, they remembered how he behaved, what he'd done, all that. We thought, maybe we got a sin on our hands. So, when they got around to introducing the cause, they dug him up. And they found something very strange. He had been buried prematurely. And he awoke in the coffin and chewed his nails.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that was the end of the cause. Why? Because it introduced the possibility that he might have had final despair. Now, we don't know that, ladies and gentlemen, at all. Thomas A. Kempis might very well be in heaven this very moment, and, please God. But he will never be canonized. And what does this tell us? It tells us that we can be as holy as you like. But when push comes to shove, we're all in danger until we breathe our last. That's why we have to start with us. Show me your personal perfection, and I will become very envious. Which is one of the seven deadly sins.
Okay, next question is from Superfan David Plitt.
Mr. Plitt. Superfan.
Would Mr. Coulombe help to clear up my understanding of G.K. Chesterton's views on democracy and monarchism as political systems? In various writings, Chesterton is both critical and complimentary of both, if only indirectly. One Chesterton quote comes to mind. I am for democracy, a democracy of the living and the dead. Also in various writings he is extremely critical of the English aristocracy, which I suppose I've always taken to include his being critical of the English monarchy in general.
Oh, that's a good question. Next. Oh, no. Well, GK's views of these things were kind of complex, not unlike GK himself. His innate sympathies were with the poor, the little man, and so on. But by the same token, he was aware enough to know that that's not from whence society generally runs.
Mm-hmm.
His critiques of the monarchy and the aristocracy were bound up with the English case. In general, he was in favor of both. But he was also, I mean, in general, just in terms of not just England, but in general, he was in terms of monarchy per se, and aristocracy per se. But he wanted a monarch who ruled and was virtuous, and an aristocracy who believed in noblesse oblige. To the degree that the British system was not like that, he had problems with it. Remember, too, that the British aristocracy of today is primarily a recent foundation. The biggest part of the English noble families were chewed up in the Wars of the Roses.
What time was that?
1400s. There were not that many of them left, and then Henry VIII came along, dissolved the monasteries, which of course GK came to dislike intensely, which that was done strangely enough. And then he created out of some of these new men, new noblemen. And then, of course, in the 18th and 19th centuries, when the making of peerages was basically done not by the king, but by the prime minister, as an honor, like so many other things, the numbers expanded. And that kind of lord was a wealthy industrialist or a political pusher or whatnot. It was very different from the fox-hunting descendant of knights.
So G.K. Chesterton liked the fox-hunting descendant of knights, not the new aristocracy.
No.
Oh, okay.
So that was a big part of it. He saw England as being run by an oligarchy, which of course it was, as any democratic system is. But in terms of monarchy per se, he was very much in favor of it. He said monarchy is a personal form of government. The republic is an impersonal form. When he spoke of the democracy of the living and the dead, which is I'm glad you caught on to that, what he said was that what he meant was that the living have only a small part in the nature of society. Something like Mr. Justice Anthony Kennedy bringing in gay marriage, he would have considered the tyranny of the living over the dead. In other words, the institutions that our fathers brought us, and that includes the monarchy in Britain, their maintenance and their retention is part of the democracy of the living and the dead. If something has worked for generations, our generation, us little weaseling twerkers,
Okay.
Weaseling twerkers.
Weaseling twerkers. There we go.
All right, mewling, puling, weaseling twerkers. Is that better?
Okay, sure.
All right, our generation do not have the right, out of our wisdom as mewling, puling, weaseling twerkers, we don't have the right to suddenly turn everything off on its head. That's what that refers to.
Okay.
So, and he certainly, his friend Belloc in the in a book called Monarchy in the House of Commons, available online, predicted that one day the monarchy would return as a real monarchy, as opposed to the oligarchy that run the show now. See, in Britain today, the monarchy has the same relationship to real life that the Constitution does here. If you see what I mean.
The government sort of refers to it, gives lip service to it.
Yeah, and it's there. You're always aware of it. You're hearing about it all the time.
Uh-huh.
But its practical effect on what the morons in charge do is very minimal.
Yeah.
The MICs for short term, morons in charge,
Okay.
of ruling over their muling, puling, weaseling, twerking subjects. What?
Nothing.
There's nothing wrong with a setup like that. You are very critical. What is wrong with boobs being run by mental midgets?
I'm very critical. You won't even let me have certain facial expressions. And I'm the critical one.
Well, you're cruel. You're very upsetting.
It's perfect characterization of the modern man, Charles.
Yeah, it's very upsetting. Did you know today that this is National Tie Month?
Tie month?
Yes, tie.
Who's in charge of these days? These days are getting ridiculous.
I don't know. It's also Spiritual Literacy Month.
I don't believe you.
Oh, you want to make a wager on that?
I don't believe you.
Want to make a wager on it?
That's not even a word. Spiritual literacy?
Spiritual literacy.
We're going to look that up. I don't believe you. We'll see.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make a cash bet on this one.
Who? Okay, so Joe Smo can't say it. It's got to be someone of authority.
Shows that you know. It's in Wikipedia. You know it's true.
Wow, Wikipedia is the new authority on all things.
On all things, the source of all truth, infallible guide. Because it represents the will of the entirety of the people.
Wow, gosh, that's true. It's
Yeah,
very
it does.
democratic.
It sure is. You can write any bloody thing you want to. All right, what else you got?
All right, next question is from Joe.
Joe.
I've always been curious about what were nuns' purpose and duties in the early church. I've always seen nuns as strong, respectable women, but never quite understood what their official purpose was in the early church. I now know they are known for running hospitals, orphanages, and Catholic schools. But since these are all inventions of the church, I would like to know what they did at the very beginning, before their jobs today.
Well, that's a good question. Firstly, it's important to bear in mind that religious life, and what do I mean by religious life? Monks and nuns who were cloistered, brothers and sisters who are not. They're the ones who do all of the hospital work and schools and so forth. Firstly, that's, as a totality, those four sets, monks, nuns, brothers and sisters, that's called religious life. So keep that in mind. Before the legalization of the church by the Emperor Constantine, there was no such thing as religious life. The reason for that is that we were illegal, and we were, just to be one of us, was practically signing your death warrant. It was becoming a criminal. To do it required the kind of courage that entering religious life now requires, just to become one of us. All right, but now we're legal, and shortly thereafter we become a state religion. We're favored. So some people thought, this isn't enough. I want to get closer to God now. But this was the origin of the first hermits. People like St. Paul, the hermit, and St. Mary of Egypt. And the male and female versions arose at about the same time, the 300s. Eventually these people gathered together in groups, and that was the origin of monasticism, monks and nuns. St. Basil was the great father of monks in the East. I forget who the mother of nuns was in the East. But in the West, it was actually a brother-sister team, St. Benedict and St. Scholastica. Now, it was out of, their big thing was prayer. But they did do other things on the side. Educating people, healing the sick, etc., depending upon the particular place. From that kind of religious life developed all the others with a specific mission.
Yeah.
But for all of them, to this day, except those, of course, that changed after Vatican II and are now into preserving the earth or getting in touch with the goddess within or whatever. You're making that face again. Why are you doing that? Getting in touch with the goddess within, becoming more part of the cosmos. Anyway, apart from those guys or gals or whatever they are, the prayer and the salvation of one's own soul is still the first impulse of all religious life. So, to answer his question, if I can, it was a gradual development. And you can't really say what sisters were doing in the early church because they didn't exist. They did have consecrated virgins and widows and so forth. They would basically help out with the altar cloths and, visiting the sick and all that in a very basic way. I mean, think of the church ladies around the parish today. The bereavement ladies, the wedding ladies, get everything together for the wedding, all that.
Yeah.
That's what those sorts of consecrated virgins and widows used to do, which is not quite the same as religious life.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, has begun to come back in vogue in our time. I mean, we never got rid of consecrated virginity, but it's becoming a popular thing now.
Yeah. I've always thought that first and foremost, I mean, the role of the religious life, you don't go into religious life to run churches, hospitals, all that. It's to pray.
It's the prayer, yeah.
I've always thought that the convents, the cloisters, they're the powerhouses of prayer,
Yeah.
and through them, they bring grace down from heaven on all of us, and I can't help but wonder, with the crisis in the church right now, if we're not in such a bad way because we don't have the same numbers of the powerhouses of prayer.
I think it's quite possible, and really, ladies and gentlemen, if you know any contemplative houses of male or female religious that are at all sane, back them up, back them up. Whether they're Carmelites, Visitations, whatever they are, do your best by them. What else we got?
Tommy Coe asks, what's the deal with Sor Juana Ines de la Cruz?
She's dead.
Like with St. Hildegard von Bingen, feminists and lesbians have claimed her for their own. Netflix recently released a series based off of her life.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
I
it
was doing the Linda Blair. Go ahead.
Yeah, The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And it was quite the feministic, lesbianic telling.
Of course.
So was she a feminist? A lesbian? All signs point to devout Catholic.
Yeah, all signs point to devout Catholic because she was a devout Catholic. The Netflix thing and the whole lesbian feminist attempt to Shanghai her it's like V for Vendetta nicking Guy Fawkes as a symbol of liberty and lesbian freedom. If you remember, there was that element too.
Why? Because Natalie Portman was in it?
Well, no. I mean, remember there was a sub thing of the lesbian ladies who were killed. One of them was killed.
I didn't remember that. Okay.
Yeah, it's. I mean, what's a movie today without a lesbian subplot?
Yeah.
Too bad Hollywood's going downhill. Anyway, sorry, but seriously, to do a movie like that with Guy Fawkes as some sort of non-particular symbol of liberty is like doing a movie about Martin Luther King without mentioning that whole race thing,
Or Valkyrie without the whole Catholic thing.
That's right. I mean, you can't understand Stauffenberg without the Catholic thing, unless, of course, you take the thing away. I can understand why they wouldn't want it in there, because it would have offended poor Tom Cruz, who, after all, apostatized from Catholicism.
Whoa.
He was a seminarian.
I can't picture that. Okay.
I'd pay not to. But, no, I mean, it's... Moderns will grasp at anything they like, regardless of the reality of the situation. Well, look at what they've done to St. Francis for years.
I can't stand what they did to St. Francis. I don't like what they do to St. Joan of Arc, too.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, Harvey Milk was actually a pious Catholic and a Knight of Columbus.
Is that the mayor of San Francisco?
Yeah. Not the mayor, but the councilman.
The councilman, yeah.
Yeah, I've decided. I'm just using him. He's popular, so I'm taking him over.
Okay.
Yeah. I I mean, anybody can do this. General Eisenhower, President General Eisenhower, was the symbol of pornography, of freedom from pornography.
Okay. Well, the one quote that sticks out with me with Eisenhower is he thought the twist was the beginning of the end in terms of the decline of our morality. But sure.
Yeah, but that's what he said. That has to do with him. I mean, Sister Juana de la Cruz, wrote all sorts of stuff that you could hardly interpret as lesbian or feminist. Quite the opposite.
Uh-huh.
But that's not important. What's important is we like her, so we want her.
Ah.
So we at the National Pornographers Union have adopted President Eisenhower as our symbol. I like Ike. Who doesn't like Ike? And if you don't like pornography, you hate Ike.
Wow, we have drifted into some strange world right now.
Yes, it's called the 21st century, the year of our Lord 2017. We have drifted into that world, where Sor Juana de la Cruz is seized as a lesbian symbol. Queen Victoria was a martyr for freedom of speech.
Okay.
It's true because it pops out of what's left of my decaying brain.
I don't even know what to say anymore.
Me neither. All right, what else we got?
Okay, our last question for today is from Jared. Charles and Vincent, do you have any interesting Advent traditions?
Well, it's doing the twist.
Eisenhower is just... He's face-palming right now.
All right, we'll leave Ike and the twist out of this. No, there's a lot to do with Advent. What's the first thing we know about Advent?
I don't know. What's the first thing?
Okay, in 2 days' time, you're going to go to Mass. Now, what are you going to notice about the priest?
He's wearing different colors?
Ah, which color in particular? This is
Purple?
teeth. Yes! Very good. All right, now, what is purple symbolic of?
Royalty? Rebirth?
Help me, Mommy. What is the other season of the year when they wear purple?
Easter? Lenten?
Lent.
Lent.
Okay. Now, okay, Lent. Now, what is the hallmark of Lent?
The hallmark of Lent is fasting?
Ah, penance.
Penance.
Ah! Okay. Advent used to be kept like Lent.
Ah.
In the Eastern rites, they have what they call, this period of time, is called the Nativity Fast.
Okay.
All right. So what I'm saying is, what are you looking at me?
Purple symbolizes penance?
Yes.
Huh. Okay.
It does symbolize royalty also, that's true, but not in this context.
Okay.
This context, it's penance, which is why you have it in Lent, why you have it in Advent, and a couple of other times again. Okay. And why, in the new Mass, they use it for funerals. And you'll see it on All Souls Day in the new Mass.
Okay.
So, anyway. So where are we with this? The problem we have today is that Christmas begins the day after Halloween. But that's the commercial Christmas.
Yeah.
Okay. But Advent continues up to and including Christmas Eve. It ends with Midnight Mass. And traditionally, that period was spent in a not quite as extreme form of Lent.
Okay.
So, a lot of the customs that we have from that period of time have to do with fasting and abstinence.
That makes sense.
Ah. But, there are feast days scattered throughout that time. So
We don't have to fast on feast days, do we?
we don't have to fast on feast days. And not just that, not on big feast days. And mind you, there's no requirement to fast or abstain at all during Advent today. It's all a question of private devotion. But traditionally, the only sign of Christmas that you would have in a Catholic house before Christmas Eve was perhaps the empty manger. That is to say, you'd have the manger itself, the little house.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have Jesus and Mary, but no baby Jesus. No sheep. No shepherds. No three kings. No reindeer. None of that. All right. And then on Christmas Eve, they make a big deal about placing the Christ child on the manger.
Ah.
They bring in the shepherds. And then the Epiphany, they bring in the three kings. And then they keep that up till Candlemas. That was how that was done. There'd be no greenery. There'd maybe be a Jesse tree up. And of course the Advent candles.
What's a Jesse tree?
A Jesse tree is a sort of wooden thing that shows you the descent of Christ from the Old Testament people.
Is it an actual tree?
No, it's a wooden thing. It looks like a tree. It's shaped like a tree.
Oh.
So those are things people did. The saints' days that come up that percolate the period, they're interesting. You have on December the 4th, St. Barbara's feast day. And that's a big deal because it's the third or fourth. I'm stuck here, ladies and gentlemen, doing this live. You look it up. But I think she's the fourth. But she's the patroness of the artillery and engineering and explosions and stuff like that.
Why is she the patroness of those things?
She's the patroness of those things because her father persecuted her for her faith. And he ended up getting killed by a lightning bolt.
Okay, that'll do it.
That'll do it. 2 days later, you've got St. Nicholas. And I love St. Nicholas. Not just because he's Santa Claus.
Oh.
But because in his own right, he was a bishop in Asia Minor. His tomb is still venerated. His bones are now in Bari, which is a town that should be dear to you.
Oh, it is.
They've got a huge basilica there. And he still has the oil that comes out of his bones.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it always has. It did when he was in Turkey, back in the 700s. And it's a big day in different parts of Europe for giving gifts. Germany and the Netherlands and all that. And very often, someone will come not as Santa, but as St. Nicholas, dressed as a bishop. Usually with a sidekick, very often black. The sidekick carries a switch. So St. Nicholas comes to reward the good boys and girls, and his pal comes to, punish the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
The kid's always afraid of the other one, but St. Nicholas doesn't let him do anything bad. And then you've got December the 8th, which is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. Now this is a very important feast for us here in the United States.
Holy day of obligation, for one.
It is, but it's our national day.
Oh, that's right.
Like St. Patrick for the Irish, St. Andrew for the Scots, tax day for the Californians. What? Well, anyway, so it's a very, very important day. And I mean, really, you should have barbecues and fireworks and all that on December 8th. That's when we should celebrate being American.
Yeah.
Then you've got on December 12th, you've got Our Lady of Guadalupe, Empress of all the Americas. And December 13th, you've got St. Lucy's Day. And all of these days have customs that were attached to them traditionally. What you do with them now, of course, is very much up to you. But try to keep Advent in a more penitential manner. Just go to the Christmas parties you don't really have a choice to go to. And, start doing them yourself after Christmas, during the 12 days.
I think I'm going to do that when I start a family. Is I'm going to do the gift giving after Christmas on Epiphany.
No.
Because I like that, because then you keep Christmas Christ-centric.
Yeah, well, that's what my brother does.
Yeah. And also, too, the other benefit, because my sister does this, is the big benefit is you get to buy the after Christmas sales.
That's for sure.
It's huge
Well,
discounts, yeah.
similarly, if you don't put up the Christmas tree until Christmas Eve, they are cheap.
Yeah.
They are cheap.
Yeah.
And if you just put up the Christmas greenery and all that on Christmas Eve and decorate the house on Christmas Eve, and if you've been keeping Advent, to some degree, the more you fast and abstain during Advent, the more Christmas morning explodes on you. As with Easter, I mean, if you keep Lent very strictly, that first meal with meat on Easter, you can barely contain yourself. But the other thing too, is if you keep Christmas Day, or Christmas Eve rather, as a day of fast and abstinence, which it was in the traditional calendar, that next day, your Christmas dinner is going to mean so much more to you. These things are given us for a reason, They work psychologically. They work with our nature, and we get rid of them because they're unpleasant. But then we don't understand why it is we're sick of Christmas the day following.
Yeah.
Whereas the other thing too is that there's all this pressure during that period they call the holidays, which is really December. To do this and that, and this, and by the time you come to Christmas, most people have been to a Christmas party almost every day. They've all gained 12 pounds.
Yeah.
They've spent a ton of money, and they're not happy with it. If I think for some people, not me, because I'm actually listening to it on my radio right now, but a lot of radio stations have this all holiday music.
Right.
From Thanksgiving to Christmas. Very little religious. Holiday music.
Of course, religious, you can't do that.
No. And, don't get me wrong. I like Frosty the Snowman. I do. I like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It's true. I like chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Jack Frost nipping it. Anyway.
I like Adeste Fidelis more.
Yeah. I do too. But I'd be lying if I said I disliked the secular Christmas music. It's just that an unadulterated diet of nothing but gets cloying.
Yeah.
Because it's all about feelings of different kinds, which you may or may not feel. I mean, I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on me. And, I have to admit that phrase has always struck me ever since my dad died. And I was generally going to be very honest and open. My dad loved Christmas. And for me, Christmas was really Christmas with him. Christmas in that sense. In the sense of where the love light gleams. My dad's dead these 22 years. There will never again for me on this earth be a home like the one I had when my parents were both alive. I mean, I even if I had gotten married, there'd be that home.
Yeah.
For the kids and so forth, we'd be establishing it. But I will never be able to go back to that home. And I don't mean home in terms of a physical location. So those sorts of things don't have the same effect on me. Whereas the religious ones remind us of the reality behind Christmas. When you get to a certain age, you hear things like, have yourself a merry little Christmas. And here we are, as in olden days, merry golden days of yore. Faithful friends who are dear to us gather near to us once more. The problem is, once you reach a certain age, I'm not quite there yet, thank God, but I can see it coming. Most of those friends are dead.
Yeah.
So the problem with our Western Christmas, that's become so irreligious and so secular, is that it's based upon feelings that wane after a while. And that's why so many people are suicidal around the holidays. If I were living alone in a town, let's say I just arrived, I don't really know anybody, You know what I would do for Christmas?
What?
I'd get a tree
Okay.
and I'd decorate it. But, and I get a nativity set. But I would go to 3 masses of Christmas. I would go to the midnight mass. I would go to the mass at dawn, which I've never been to in my whole life. And I would go to the morning mass. Why? Because I've got nothing else to do. Why not give it all up to our Lord completely?
Mm.
You know, if I had no family or friends of my own in a particular place, why not just focus completely on the birth of our Lord?
It's true.
But without that focus, the holiday becomes almost a cruel joke.
Yeah.
If all it is a celebration of friends and family and togetherness and all that, I'm all for friends, family, and togetherness, believe you me. But if that's all it is, it will fail you with a big resounding pop. That's why the suicide rates go up. That's why all sorts of unpleasantries happen during Christmas, because people feel cheated somehow. They're led to expect a feeling which may or may not actually occur, as that ancient medieval hymn, Rocking Around the Christmas Tree, assures us. You will get a sentimental feeling. What if you don't? What if you don't get that sentimental feeling? Where does that leave you?
That's true.
So, for my part, I would say keep Advent strictly, celebrate whichever of those saints' days strike your fancy, and I hate to sound like a Hallmark card, but keep Christ in Christmas. And regardless of your circumstances, you will have a Merry Christmas. You got what about Oplotki? You're Slovak.
Oh. Well, yeah. We Christmas Eve is the most special meal of the year in our house. I have an Italian last name, but I also have a lot of Slovak blood in me on my my mom's side. So you made that joke last episode about the 7 fishes of Italy. Well, we don't do that actually. We do a Slovak Christmas. We've incorporated some fish now at my dad's behest, but for all the years prior, it was purely a Slovak Christmas, and so that involved mostly famine food, pierogies, babalki, but what makes the meal so special is the beginning of it. You have, as you say, oplatki. Oplatki, I guess, this is an Eastern. This is a Slovak tradition.
It's Slovak, Polish, Ukrainian, Eastern. Speaking the Eastern rites as well.
Yeah, and basically, what oplatki is, it's a wafer like the Eucharist, but it's in bigger square shapes. And what we do is we dip it in honey and we share the oplatki with each other, and we just use that as a preface to the meal. And it's very nice. Oh, actually, before even that, what we do is we take a glass of whiskey, and we each take a sip. I usually just wet my lips. I didn't take it, but everybody, that you pass the whiskey glass around. Everybody takes a sip, and well, the whiskey glass, usually hardly anybody would drink from the whiskey glass, and then it finished at my dad. And my dad, well, it was left to him to finish the glass of whiskey, and he didn't have any complaints. He made the sacrifice for us all.
That's so brave. So brave. I appreciate that kind of bravery.
But yeah, and we always do it by candlelight, so it has a very solemn feeling. Oh, pea soup's another thing we do. But yeah, so Christmas Eve is it's the most solemn meal of the year for sure. It's always had this special place in my mind.
Well, you see, and honestly, ladies and gentlemen, I do think, Christmas, even for the secular mind, even for the secular world, it still has a touch of its magic. And I do think that one of the reasons why the celebration of Christmas has been anticipated by 3 months It's because life today is so harsh and nasty.
That's true. That's very true.
You know, the I've said the worst element of the sentimental feeling stuff. It's, you know, that's all true, but at the same time, for those who can get it invoked by the look of Christmas balls and tinsel and all that, what a relief from the everyday awful horror.
Right.
So, I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. Fortunately, we have 2 more broadcasts before our gala Christmas episode.
Our gala Christmas episode, is that what we're going to do?
Yeah, we're gonna rocking around the Christmas tree. Have a happy holiday. No?
It's okay. I don't mind it. I'm very tolerant.
Well, the tolerance is next to cleanliness. I don't know. But anyway, seriously, ladies and gentlemen, life is a great adventure. And these great holy days of ours are lamplights along that road of adventure. So, Advent is beginning. Keep it as well as you possibly can. And I guarantee you, your Christmas will be wonderful. And maybe you can send away to the same place in Pennsylvania where they get their oplatki.
Okay, that's it for this episode. If you'd like to send Charles a question, you can do so through the Tumblr House website, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, and remember, the soul you save may be your own.